and say, hey, everybody, welcome. Another Hot Topic Tuesday. It is June 7th, 2022. And my partner today, I think most of you would know this guy. He is our branch manager out of our Clarkston location. Please welcome Mr. John Lafferty.
Hey, everybody. Great to be here.
You know, it's like every Monday morning I wake up and going, okay, what am I going to do tomorrow? What am I going to share? What am I going to talk about? And John happened to be handy. So I said, hey, John, help me out here, buddy. What's the hot topic? What's going on? And how did you come up with this thought that we need to revisit the escalation clause?
Having conversations with a few different agents about the struggles with the escalation clause, putting in some protections in there that sometimes we don't think about when we're writing an escalation clause, and ignoring our own escalation clause that's in the library, which some people think is a little too long, a little too wordy. But as you and I started to talk about it, realized some of the things we were talking about that was recently in the Michigan Letter of the Law.
Which is a real key. I mean, many of you probably, I would hope, did look at that video because it was when you brought that up that I went, you know what? They brought a number of great scenarios up that explain really the why to a very long, very well thought out, very well written escalation clause. And it was through that it was like, okay, well, we need to talk about that today because we are still running into the need for the escalation clause due to competing offers.
We are.
And what was some of the questions that came up, like the what ifs?
Yeah, the what ifs. You write a escalation clause into the contract, but did you remember to address a contingency offer that maybe the seller wants to use against your offer to get you up to a higher price? Is a contingent offer the same as a regular offer?
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, when we make as little as I hope we have to do it, but when we as a purchaser or a buyer's agent, we look at making an offer which is going to be contingent upon the sale and closing of our existing residence. Quite often, what do we have to do in regards to the price to make it attractive, to hopefully get that seller to say yes to it? We raise it up. Well, you know, the question is that really a bona fide offer when they're making something like that? So anytime that you would have done an escalation clause previously, did you address that? Of course, what's another one?
Another one would be another offer that has a similar escalation clause. So you have two offers. Let's say they're both the same price, but they both have competing escalation clauses. So if they're the same price and one's not more than the other, can the seller invoke the escalation clause of both to try to run up the price? Do you have something in there to protect yourself on that?
How about the aspect of concessions?
Right.
Right? Because, I mean, think about that, guys. When we look at it, we talk about the net to the seller. So in a point of an escalation clause, have we addressed that? Because you know what? I mean, we think about the simple ones that somebody might have written. In the event that there's, I don't even know how they would write it because I still think about how it should be written. But have you ever done just a simple, if there is another offer, seller or purchaser will go up to X amount of dollars, but not more than the sale price, just something that simple. And if we haven't addressed all the things that John just talked about, we've got a mess on our hands. So share with them, because what we know is we've got this out there. If they're a Real Comp member, where do they find it at?
Find it in Remind. Under clauses, under our Town and Country page. All the clauses are right there.
Don't forget, you got two audiences today, bud.
Oh, sorry. And on the Coldwell Banker Professional side, I'm sure it's under the CBP folder as well, under clauses and remind.
Yeah. So if you have it, if you have real comp access, you have these. To my knowledge, all of the managers actually have this available to you. So if you need the clause to be able to put in, most of the MLSs have DocuSign or Remind. And it is my understanding that regardless of the system that you're in, you have this available to you. All right. But let's take a look at this and see how this addresses what we just brought up that could be concerns or issues. John, I'll let you just kind of read this first paragraph here.
Okay. If prior to the seller's ratification of the contract, the seller receives one or more additional written bona fide offers, which shall be from a party who is unrelated, unfamiliar, and unaffiliated to the seller, and acting independently and in their self-interest with terms acceptable to seller.
Hey, let's pause it right there for a second. What's the importance of all that stuff? Why is that there?
That's very important, because how easy would it be for a seller to call up a family member and say, hey, do me a favor, write an offer so I can get the price up on the house. And I've seen it happen.
Right?
Certainly not in this company. Certainly not. But I've absolutely seen that happen. A ghost offer comes in to cause the price to go up on another buyer who had an escalation clause.
We're just making sure it's an arm's length transaction is really what it is, that nobody is going to pull off what we just brought up here. And again, think about ones that you may have written before and you hadn't used this type of escalation clause because it was too lengthy, too wordy. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going.
All right. And from which seller would receive an equal or higher net than the net reflected in this offer. Then this contract sales price shall automatically increase by X number of dollars above any other offers net to seller, not to exceed a maximum sales price of X dollars.
I can't think anything. That's pretty well written right there.
I agree.
So really all we need to do then, replace the X's, consult with the buyer. We're not going to tell them what they need to do, what they should do, but we're going to offer guidance and direction so that they can put in the amounts that would make sense. I think a key is that we're also addressing the aspect of a bona fide offer, something that is realistic and not going to be able to drive this up beyond. But here's the aspect of if the bona fide offers may not be contingent upon the selling or closing of another residence. So we're telling you, we're not going to compete against somebody who may be a little bit desperate and therefore write an unrealistic offer price that would have us driving it up a whole bunch higher. All right. Anything to add to that one?
No.
All right. I'll let you go further.
If other offer includes escalation terms, this automatic increase will be applied to the maximum sales price of the highest competing escalation addendum.
So now we've just addressed that one big aspect of what if. With the way this one is written, we're saying as a buyer, yep, we'll allow it to go back and forth. And basically, if they're as high as we are, it's the maximum. If they're slightly below, it can go up as high as however we may have written it. So this one is saying, yes, we will compete against others who have made an offer with an escalation clause.
Yes.
All right. Well, this particular one, as you can see, guys, is there with the appraisal guarantee. There is another one that's basically the same thing, except for it doesn't have the appraisal guarantee. So let's go through this part that has the appraisal guarantee in it now. Go ahead, John.
Okay. If the lender's appraisal is less than the agreed sales price, the purchaser agrees to proceed to settlement and pay up to X number of dollars difference from the amount of the lender's appraisal in cash. If settlement does not occur due to purchaser's failure to comply with the terms of this paragraph, the purchaser shall be in default and shall forfeit the earnest money deposit.
Ooh, do we have to leave that part in?
You mean I can edit this?
Yes, indeed. So the thought is, guys, this is the buyer making their ultimate offer. It's like, I'm willing to sacrifice. They're giving, they're saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, very little risk. Should you take my offer, so much so that I'm willing to forfeit my earnest money deposit. Now, if the buyer doesn't want to do that, and I would make sure that they understand that as it's written, that is a way of doing it. But if they decide they don't want to do that because they're giving, say, a $15,000, $20,000 earnest money deposit, then maybe they don't want to put that amount at risk. In which case, click in and just delete that portion. All right?
In the event that the appraised value of the property as performed by a licensed third-party appraiser is less than the purchase price minus the shortfall, purchaser and seller understand and agree seller is under no obligation to consider reducing the agreed upon sales price.
I think that simply makes sense if everybody gets that, but if it is less than, well, if the appraisal goes so low that even the guarantee amount over is under the guaranteed price, now all of a sudden what we've addressed is, yes, all things are up for negotiation now. It's not committing the buyer to move forward. It's not committing the seller to move forward. It's saying they would have to come to an agreement. And what if they can't? Make sense? I'm going to check our chat here too, John, real quick and just see. Where can we relocate the form in Remind? What it would be is under clauses. So we'll hit this very quickly. As you can tell, this is lengthy, so it's not going to fit in additional conditions on the purchase agreement. Yeah. What you're going to have to do is to open up the amendment addendum, insert cursor, says add new clause, click on that, and then once you're in there, the escalation clause, you simply drop to or scroll to the appropriate one. It will drop it immediately into the addendum. And then once you go back to the addendum, you can make your adjustments at that point. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, your manager should be able to help you. But again, that's simply going to the addendum, hitting the clauses, and selecting the appropriate one.
Darwin, that sounds really easy. It beats the heck out of copy and paste.
It really is, isn't it? If only we all knew. So yeah, definitely figure that out, guys. If it doesn't make sense, get with your manager. They can get with me, and we'll show them how to be able to do that, so they can show your whole crew, your associates. What do you say to another agent who says this is wordy or want it to read another way? Man, that's a great question, because John's heard it himself already from our own agents, right? I guess my thought would be, and we discussed this.
We did.
I would rather have a really wordy agreement than have a really wordy process that cost me thousands of dollars because I wrote something brief that didn't cover everything. And all of a sudden, my seller found out that they should have had a higher escalated purchase price, or my buyer calculated something out, found that they should have had a much lower purchase price, or why the heck did you not address the aspect of concessions? Why was I competing against an offer that they had to sell their house yet? So I'd pose those questions to anybody that wanted to throw that to me, in why I have a wordy paragraph regarding this escalation clause. It's simply protecting the buyer and seller. And by the way, we put this in such a way that you've now got it onto one page that will fit on one form. Because what does exist, if you wanted to go what Mar has, and I'm just going to hold this up, this does exist. And you can kind of see a little bit about what's there. Mar Legal put this together for us, but guess what? It's a two-pager. So we've got everything on one page, and we address everything between what would be on here, but it's in an addendum. So my suggestion, just share with them, speak logically, and tell them, I'm just simply making sure as much as possible, without practicing law, that we are covering our assets, those of the brokers, those of the buyers, of the sellers. And of course, you remember that old Latin proverb?
Which one?
Floyd taught us this one way back when. Anus protectus, people. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the one.
A little bit. Okay, all right, thank you. I knew that you knew that one. All right, so let me see if there's, all right, let's see, because we're not even through all of that PA yet. Please repeat where we can find that. I think I did that. That was not a new, yep, that was an old. What do you say? Amend the PA for price if gap amount doesn't get high enough for appraisal, plus additional funds, and renegotiate. It is enough to use amendment to PA. Nancy, I am not sure what you're asking there.
Neither am I.
And John's not either. So maybe pop yourself off of mute there, and let's see if we can address that and get you something real clear.
Okay, what I'm trying to say is, you know how people get all emotional, and then sometimes these clauses and all the offers scare them off. We're not trying to do that. So if we write a whole new purchase agreement, that gives other people time to come in. So if the seller, if you get to that point and the appraisal's in, and the appraisal and the amount the buyer agree with the seller to pay over doesn't come up to the amount that the seller was going to get, and they want to renegotiate, can we just use an amendment to this PA to keep it so that we're still talking with just these two parties to renegotiate at this point? Or are they open to everything else that comes in because the listing agent says, whoa, this didn't work out, and calls everybody else that made an offer or showed it and showed interest but didn't want to compete?
If I'm understanding you correctly, the answer would be yes. And then I would say, remember that the purchase agreement is not dead until the purchaser is not able to live to the terms of the purchase agreement.
Until
what the paragraph is actually saying is that in the event that it's such a shortfall, then the buyer and seller can negotiate.
Without other people coming in, back in, is what my question is. Is that a way to deal with it so that it keeps it?
Well, again, it's not dead until both the buyer and seller say it's dead.
So they can call other agents all they want to bring those buyers back in, but you have an agreement, you're under contract, they can't do anything with anybody else until you agree that the purchase agreement is dead.
Which you mean a mutual release signed by all parties?
You got it.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because I did have an issue where I had, I forget how many offers, and 3 of them were new offers from the original ones, and they didn't have this escalation clause the way that we do. And this was last year before all of this anyway. And yeah, so the top buyer walked away. I had initially called the second agent sitting there with the seller saying, do you want to be the backup offer if something, you know, doesn't work out on this first offer? And she didn't know what I was talking about.
And there's one that we might have to do in a future one as backup offers too.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that was the thing. So I put it that way to her. I even sent an agreement for her seller to sign And what happened was the top offer got cold feet. He was supposed to do his inspection the very next day. The next morning, I got a call. He wants to back out from his agent.
Yep.
So I did it subject
Yep.
to mutual release of the first offer.
Yep.
So the second offer that was, ended up being higher is the one that actually closed. But I just want to know in this situation, if it was the opposite where the escalation clause and the amount over the appraisal part that the buyer agreed to pay extra, they may not have more money or they might. So
Right, they may
you're
not
saying
have
that-
enough to be able to do it, but we should, in advance, actually take a look at that. It's when, again, when the shortfall is greater than what the guarantee was. That's where it's like, okay, we're open for negotiation. It doesn't mean that the deal is dead. It's not dead until the buyer says, okay, I can't live to the terms of the agreement. I don't want to do that. The seller says, well, I don't want to come down, and they can't find any middle ground. Mutual release. And that's when finally the deal would be dead. So let me move on. I think,
Can I have
Rachel, you brought up a great question here too.
One thing, can they have a time frame in there within 48-hour agreement or something? Because it just
That's in
kind of
there,
leaves it
right?
out there.
It's in the next sentence.
Yep,
Okay.
that's in there. That is in there. Yep, no problem. So Rachel brought up a great one, which, does essentially have you run into it. And do they have to consider escalation clause? Well, I want to make sure that we understand, does the seller's agent have to present an offer with an escalation clause?
Yes.
Guys, what's the answer?
Yes.
Absolutely. It's an
Must present
offer.
all offers.
All offers must be presented. So the agent cannot not present unless they had previously in writing from a seller that says, look, if you get any of those silly escalation clauses, I don't want to see it.
I see that a lot, Darwin. I see a lot
Yeah.
of agents actually not too far from the Rochester office that will actually write in their comments, escalation clauses will not be considered. And I know on the listing side, we've had, my personal opinions aside about escalation clauses. I know that there's a lot of our sellers are just like, offer what you want, like offer,
Yes.
If this is your highest and best, bring me your highest and best. I think that's starting to taper off a bit. That's a different subject, but I've just noticed that there are a lot of agents, specifically in the higher end markets, that will specifically put in writing, escalation clauses will not be considered.
Yeah, and what I would say is I understand that. Matter of fact, 4 or 5 years ago, first time I ever saw one, I was like, what are you talking about? Just tell me what you'll do. So I was actually on that side, but I still had to present the offer. In the end, I had to present the offer. Now, if we're going to go into that direction where we say, and we have that discussion with the seller says, look, I heard these escalation clause things and I don't want to deal with that. Get it in writing on the exclusive right. And then I would actually put in the agent remarks, seller has directed broker not to present any offers with an escalation clause. Seller directs. Now you're telling everybody right up front, I've been in writing instructed to follow this way. Okay, so good discussion, Rachel. I like that. Yes, double yes. Some good stuff in there. Simply ask. Yep, you can do that. Matter of fact, we're gonna finish this up and then address one additional question as to what does the seller have to do or how do they respond? Okay. But let's go back, John, and finish up what we've got here from where we were.
So where we were is if the parties do not mutually agree to alter the terms of the purchase agreement in writing within 48 hours, and again, this is in reference to a low appraisal, receiving a copy of said appraisal, the purchase agreement shall be deemed terminated and no longer valid and or enforceable.
So Nancy, that addresses the rest of your question with what you ran into in that experience.
I love this paragraph here. Seller will provide a copy of the other offer with higher net price with this escalation addendum. Any change in the sales price under this addendum will be effective and binding upon seller and purchaser when seller has ratified the contract and this addendum at the above escalated sales price.
Yeah, see, it addresses the whole thing at that point. There's no questions left open for interpretation as to what will happen. So I want to go back. Seller will provide a copy of the other offer with higher net price. So the question has come up previously, can we actually request the copy? And the answer is yes. Now, do they have to agree to this? No, but they're going to have to amend this addendum if they choose not to give that. Then we take it back to the buyer. We go, hey, buyer, they've agreed to everything, but they don't want to show you the purchase agreement that would have the escalation clause and move you to the price. It's up to the buyer at that point as to whether or not they would want to accept the offer. Who's that gentleman with his hand in the air?
Joseph.
How you doing, bud?
Hey, bud, how you doing? So say, how would that wording go with the amendment for the, they don't want to provide the copy of the other
Yeah,
agreement?
They would
What would they say?
I think they would probably just cross it out.
They'd probably cross it out. And at that point, you have to have a conversation with your buyer. Is the escalation clause being triggered legit? Do they really have another purchase agreement, or are they just trying to bump us up? Without the actual purchase agreement from another buyer, you don't know.
Yeah, okay, so they can just cross it out rather than write something up.
Yep, that's the way I would see it.
Yeah.
So the last part of that is simply that you're going to have to make adjustments to the purchase agreement if the escalation clause is in place. You're going to do that by the old cross out and initial, or put it into a purchase agreement where it has a counter offer section, and then all parties would sign and initial. So the key is that what I would say is it's a counter offer. You've made a change to the purchase agreement, even though it's a clarification as to what a new price would be due to the escalation clause, it would be a counter offer. Okay. And the last one is a simple, another take care of our assets.
Yep. Any change in the sales price under this addendum will be effective and binding upon seller and purchaser when seller is, oh, I read that already.
Yep.
Purchaser and seller agree to initial these changes in the price and financing paragraphs and or counteroffer section of the contract upon request by either party. Purchaser has made this offer of his or her own volition and discretion. Purchaser and seller agree to hold agents in a, okay, hold harmless. No, I think the last paragraph is important too.
Yeah.
Because the seller is acknowledging exactly what you've done for them, and they have agreed to this and acknowledge it, which is great.
Yeah, it's the purchaser going, I know that I've made an offer that may not make the most sense, that I'm actually offering what may be more than what an appraiser would actually appraise a property for. So we're saying that you may be paying more than what the market value of property is. Don't blame us. We guided you and this is your offer. This is what you've decided to do. Leave us alone. That's really what that is saying. So good stuff there. Let's check again the chat and then we'll cover another part here.
We're out of time.
Are we at 12:30? Really? Wow. Oh, that's unreal.
I know. I was concerned when we started talking about this and we'd be wrapped up at 12:10.
I thought maybe 12:15. If I have an escalation clause, I add that we need to see proof to the other offer. That's already in the addendum. So you would not have to do that, Shelley. It's already in the addendum. The only other thing I would throw out to you, I want you to know that for Real Comp subscribers, you will also now see this, which is an acknowledgement and a release, because what we're doing, we are addressing a couple of things that may be out there. So if you're concerned about this, one is we know that people make an offer non-contingent, or excuse me, without inspection. We're saying you shouldn't do that, but you're doing it. They may make the earnest money deposit non-refundable. We're just want to make sure that that's not normal, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, leave us alone. And that the shortfall provision. So it's a release again, so that we're going, we've discussed this, we talked about your options, this is what you've decided to do, leave us alone. So guys, that is another hot topic. Please make note, next Tuesday, we will not be together for a Hot Topic Tuesday. Leadership will be out that day and getting educated and updated on things that are happening. So no Hot Topic Tuesday next week. Tomorrow is our monthly Lunch and Learn. And we've got an outstanding speaker, David Knox, coming on. David's been around for 40 years. Absolutely inspirational. You're going to get the truth hit right between the eyes with a lot of entertainment. And also for those who thought about the manufactured housing, I put a request in to have Phil Seaver come back in and talk with us regarding that bill that is passed on how to be able to get the affidavit of a fixture.
That's great.
So I've got that request in. We'll get Phil back in. Anything to wrap up?
No, I think that next topic that you're going to do with him regarding that is very topical. I've had several agents come to me and ask specifically about that affidavit of a fixture.
So June 13th is when that kicks in. I'm overdue. You guys see ya. Have a great week. Go talk to people.